Neuroscientist here. I don't know if this counts as something I wish I didn't know, but it's something I'm stuck with, and if I think about it too long, I get existential. Trigger warning if you are prone to existential crisis. Do you ever get the eerie feeling that you're living inside of a simulation? That's because you are. Buckle up. All of our sensory systems have evolved to pick up on relevant information in our external environment. For instance, our eyes are sensory organs that have evolved to pick up light from the electromagnetic spectrum. They then transduce and relay that information back to the brain so that you can make sense of what you've just seen. But when looking at the vast range of electromagnetic waves, we can actually only perceive a tiny snippet. Our ears do something similar with sound waves, but humans can only pick up on frequencies between 20 Hz and 20 kHz. That's actually why we can't hear most animals. Believe it or not, they talk and sing. Even crazier, so do plants. Some plants even appear to scream when you cut them. Unfortunately, this is too much information for me to relay to you in just 1 minute, so be sure to check out part 2 if you want to know more. Hi, Neuroscientist here. This is part 2 of me showing you that life is in fact a simulation. If you want to hear the build-up to this argument, go ahead and check out the previous video. Trigger warning if you are prone to existential crisis. Previously, I talked a little bit about the limitations of our sensory organs, but not only are they limited in terms of what they perceive, but in fact mistakes are made all the time outside of our awareness. For instance, there is a hole in the receptive field of each eye where the optic nerve leaves the back of the eyeball. But rather than seeing a few holes in space, your brain fills that information in for you. Most people are probably familiar with this image, but basically you close your left eye and you look at the cross, and you move your head closer and farther from the cross, and you should see the dot disappear from eyesight. The reason why this is because eventually that dot passes over that optic nerve where there are no photoreceptors, and instead of seeing like a blank hole in space, your brain fills that information with what it thinks is there, which is a white background. I'm out of time, so check out part 3. I'm going somewhere with this. This is part 3 of me showing you that life is in fact a simulation. If you want to hear the build up to this argument, go ahead and check out the 2 previous videos. Trigger warning if you are prone to existential crisis. Hey, check out this really cool book. It's called Neurogastronomy, and it's by Gordon M. Shepard. This book is about how the brain creates flavor and why it matters. In this book, he talks about a particular chemical known as butyridione. Butyridione is an odorant, which means that it elicits a response in olfactory sensory neurons inside of the nose. So what does butyridione smell like? Well, if you smell butyridione and you see a picture of a juicy steak, you assume that steak is quite savory because it is the primary odorant responsible for the flavor of butter. However, if you smell this chemical while looking at a man who's working out, you're going to assume he needs to take a shower because it is the primary odorant responsible for the smell of body odor. So how is it possible that the exact same odorant elicits the exact same response in the exact same neurons, yet in one context is pleasurable and in another disgusting? Check out part 4. Part 4 of me showing you that life is in fact a simulation. Trigger warning if you are prone to existential crisis. Because I'm currently working in olfactory research, I wanted to share one more odor example with you. This one comes from personal experience. There's a particular odorant out there known as isopentylamine. In very tiny quantities, this particular chemical is used to flavor some of our processed foods, like Cheetos. But at a higher concentration, this chemical can be quite dangerous. It is corrosive to the lungs, and it elicits an extreme fear response. I once accidentally inhaled this chemical at a high concentration and ended up having a panic attack so severe it sent me to the ER. So not only are odors pleasant or unpleasant depending on context, but they're also considered pleasant or unpleasant depending on their concentration. So why did I tell you all of this? Well, I'd like to thank you for sticking with me. In the next video, I'm going to come to a conclusion using everything that I've just told you in the previous videos. I have hundreds of these examples, and I would really like to make it to 1,000 followers so that I can go live. I'd really like to tell you much, much more. Part 5 of Life is a Simulation. Trigger warning if you are prone to existential crisis. So here's the thing. Our brain cannot tell us anything that our sensory organs cannot perceive. Our sensory organs are not only limited in terms of functionality, but they make mistakes constantly. The only reason we're not vastly aware of it is because our brain also goes to great lengths to try to hide that fact from us. In the example of vision, I demonstrated to you that we are actually unable to see most light. There are also many sounds going on at any given time that we are unable to hear. And with the olfactory example, I showed you 2 instances where odors are perceived completely different even though they're the exact same chemical. The reason this is because your brain is sort of just making shit up as it goes. It's taking all the information that it gets from all of its various inputs, and the output is a coherent conscious thought of what it thinks is happening in your external environment, but you've never actually experienced real life. You've only ever experienced it through this very narrow lens.
What is something something you found out late in life that you should have known earlier, but you just didn't?
That we literally become what we think about? We should be taught this in kindergarten, but we're not. So, this is your mind. As you think in your heart, so are you. And if you were to think thoughts of worry and doubt, you move into an emotion of fear. That fear comes out in the body as anxiety, and we suppress anxiety. Long-term suppression of anxiety turns to depression, and the body now is at dis-ease. Dis-ease, hyphenate it. Compared to the other side, if you develop understanding through study and growing awareness, your emotion becomes one of faith that things are going to work out. And your body's at ease, and you pick up momentum and start accelerating and become creative. Okay? We become what we think about, and if you think thoughts of happy, healthy, wealthy, you become happy, healthy, wealthy in the physical world. As a person thinks in their heart, so are they. We become what we think about. Why don't we teach this to people? It's the secret of life, actually.
You just knocked a glass of wine off a table at a friend's house. There's nothing more comforting in that moment than to find out it doesn't matter. For them to say, no big deal. It can still matter to you, which is why you're bustling around cleaning up glass and dabbing the red wine with white wine, life hack alert, but it doesn't really matter. Now, strangely, it can actually feel gratifying to solve this problem you caused. But if your friend was pissed or sad about the broken glass or the spilled wine, it would still matter, but in a stressful way. It's the exact same way with life. The universe is our host, and they've said, no big deal about everything. Our ultimate host is not pissed or sad, they just don't care. Nothing really matters. And this is what gives us the freedom to feel our own meaning and feel it with ease instead of a sense of fear or guilt. This, my friends, is the motherfucking gospel. You like good news? The universe doesn't give a shit. On the flip side, if there were ultimate meaning in the universe, life would be completely pointless. But that's for another video. Come along if you want to. In the meantime, take a deep breath. Nothing matters, so anything can.
All right, here's a weird psychological trick that'll make you super duper productive. Did I go in too far? Well, all right, so when I was in high school, I actually had terrible grades. I went to 4 high schools. Wasn't gonna get into college. That's how bad my grades were. Now, I ended up getting into Washington State University on academic probation. Well, when I got there, I ended up getting a mentor who gave me some of the best advice on how to be productive. He said this, he said, treat college like a 9-to-5 job, which means get up early, go to the library if you don't have any classes. In between classes, go back to the library, take a lunch break, and do that every day from 9 to 5. What I found that happened was I never had to cram for a test. I never had to work on the weekends. I always had everything done within that 40-hour period of time. Now, the other thing I did during that time is I would keep a 15-minute log of what I was doing, and then at the end of the day, I would look for ways to improve my productivity. Give it a shot. You're gonna be super successful.
When you are a loner, 9 times out of 10 it's because you hold yourself to high standards and high regards. You understand your value. You're a person who knows what's going on in the world. You're paying attention. And you tend to expect the same thing out of other people. You have certain ethics and code of conducts about yourselves. And you expect others to be the same way. You expect others to be forthcoming, transparent, honest, kind-hearted, you know? And at times, when you expect these things out of people and they do not display those attributes, it angers you. So it frustrates you. So you tend to just veer away from people.
Well, turns out I'm basically an NPC.
What are you buying? What are you buying? What are you buying?
For the noobs among us, that stands for non-playable character, NPC. I'm essentially a side character. Like, I have a job, a role that I fill so that the main characters can continue on their quests.
What are you buying?
The nice thing about being an NPC is that you get to stick to your script, so you never really have to go outside your comfort zone.
Is it a good one?
It's one of my favorites.
Cool. I'll take it. Got any more recommendations?
Yeah, I got a whole bunch.
But sometimes a character comes along and breaks your script.
Maybe you can call me sometime. You know, to give me some suggestions.
And you might even get to go on a quest of your own.
primordial ooze, grew legs, lost the gills, developed opposable thumbs, and now I have to pay rent?
I know that this is obviously supposed to be a funny video, but it is a really important perspective to take, because when you consider the whole course of human evolution, not even all the way back to fish and slime, just like us, our species, emerging in Africa 200,000 years ago, and spreading all across the world, the monsters that we fought with, the horrors that we survived, the monumental obstacles that we as a species were able to overcome, and not only that, but thrive, creating vaccines and airplanes and robots on Mars. The very idea that this weird species of mostly hairless ape was able to fling themselves and their machines out into interplanetary space is mind-boggling. And when you juxtapose that with the fact that most of us still have to struggle for food and water and shelter and equal rights, it's really dumb.
I'm going to keep speaking on this until you understand it, because this is so important. Take a look around you. Everything in your physical reality now started off as a thought in someone's mind. They thought that thought long enough and hard enough until it manifested into our physical reality. Your mind is a tool. It is meant to be used by you. You are not meant to be used by it. You are not your thoughts. If you are your thoughts, then who is observing your thoughts? You are consciousness. When your thoughts are just running unchecked, newsflash, they're not saying anything new. It's running the same old thoughts that were programmed there so long ago. It's damn near impossible to try to force yourself to stop thinking something. So instead of trying to stop thinking something, we're going to reprogram it and replace it with a new thought that we want to be true. You are going to change the narrative. You are also going to take up a meditation practice. It takes practice to reprogram your subconscious.
Someone's opinion of you does not have to become your reality. And he taught me three things. He said, if you want to become successful in life, young man, he said, number one, you got to change your mindset. He said, you don't get in life what you want, you get in life what you are. Number two, practice OQP, only quality people. And the third thing he said, develop your communication skills, because once you open your mouth, you tell the world who you are.
Hey, I know. Forgiveness is hard because the hurt mattered. The ego is the only one that's too proud to forgive. The soul is always ready. And forgiveness is only another name for freedom. So don't depend on them to right the wrong. Forgive and set yourself free from someone else owning you.
My very first video received thousands of replies, and many of them were from young people asking for advice on love and life and making friends. Well, the best piece of advice is something that I didn't learn until I was in my late 20s, and I wish I'd learned it when I was a teenager. What I used to do was try and think of interesting things to say so that people would think I was interesting and like me. The secret is so simple. Don't talk about yourself, ask about them. It doesn't matter who they are, it doesn't matter whether they're really important or someone sleeping on the street. Take an interest, and I mean a genuine interest, in them. And it can be really simple. I mean, if you're at the checkout, ask how long they've got to go today, ask what time they started work today. Don't talk about yourself, talk about them. Everyone you meet is better than you at something, and in that you can learn from them.
I just found out a cloud weighs 1.1 million pounds!
Greg, you're real fucked up, my friend. Oh, let's do it. The atmosphere weighs 5.5 quadrillion tons. On top of you right now, there are a bunch of air molecules, like a column of atmosphere that reaches to space, and it weighs, per square inch that's on you, 15 pounds per square inch! That sounds heavy, right? And that is the weight necessary to shove oxygen into your blood so that you don't suffocate. All right, so that's how much the atmosphere weighs. Now, a cloud is significantly heavier than the atmosphere. Those little drops, each individual little droplet of water is much more dense than the atmosphere. But there are all these little air molecules pushing it up, like they're like so small that it's like basically a feather floating on the air, each individual droplet. All of them put together, super heavy. And when they get heavy enough, they fall out, and that's rain. But individually, just little feathers on the breeze.
Yo, I seen this dude on YouTube just say, your future self is watching you right now through memories. Let that sink in. The connection, the pathway, the gateway in which your future self is already watching you right now and thinking about you in the future. The pathway is already open. All we have to do is learn how to find the pathway and look through it. And we can literally talk to our future selves in the future. Bro.
If you betray me, then I have to see you differently. And you know, if we've interacted a long time, I've built up a hell of a model of you. You know, it's taken a tremendous amount of effort to generate. And I may have used that model as a predicate for all sorts of other plans, which is what you do with an intimate relationship. And so then if you do something that indicates a true mismatch, it isn't only that I have to adjust my actions. God only knows what I'm going to have to retool. I may even have to retool my perceptions of myself. I'm a lot more gullible than I thought I was, for example, and God only knows what the implications of that are. If you're close to me and you could do this to me, is that my flaw? And am I carrying that into other relationships?
What are you doing with your life? Really, this video gets heavy at the end, so scroll on if you don't care. We get down to hand, the life you're living, drifting along. We end up at a point in our lives wondering, how did I get here? Is this it? Could I be doing something better? But that feeling soon subsides, and we carry on drifting, dreaming, wondering. Another day, scrolling on your phone, looking for the next entertaining video. At this very moment, clear of the noise, watching this video, you have a chance to wake up, to think of what you really want to do with it. Go after something you've always wanted. Fight for something you care about. Help others in a way that's meaningful to you. Enough with the excuses. You don't have to drop everything. You can start small and transition your way in. Or you can stay here, waking up every day for the rest of your life until your deathbed, wondering, what if?
Okay, Joey RW11 here wants to know, how does you avoid marrying the wrong woman? First of all, you got to know your statistics. 50% of marriages end in divorce, 80% of divorces are filed by women. Women overwhelmingly are the ones choosing to end marriage, so you need to figure out if she's that type of woman. First of all, are her parents married? If they're divorced, red flag number one. Does a lot of her self-esteem, self-worth, and value come from how hot she is, how much attention she gets from men, the attention she gets on social media? If so, red flag number two. What's her relationship like with her father? If she has a troubled relationship with her father, that's a major red flag. How important is loyalty to her? What's the longest friendship she's ever had? If she doesn't have lifelong friendships or friendships with people that have lasted years and years and years and years, major red flag. If she says feminist shit like, I don't need a man, I want a man, fucking run. Is she materialistic and like money but doesn't make a lot of money herself? Red flag. If you want more, let me know, but I'd say
socialism. 7 of the 10 happiest countries are socialist. And there's probably some noise in that data, but happiness is not only about what you have, it's an absence of fear from what can be taken away from you. In most socialist countries, what you have is you don't worry about going bankrupt because your wife's diagnosed with lung cancer. So the happiest countries tend to be socialist. There's an arc of happiness across all economic classes, across all geographic boundaries, across all cultural boundaries. And you never see research this clean. And that is, the arc of happiness through the course of your life is a smile. And that is kind of 0 to 25 is the stuff of Disneyland, Han Solo, fun times with your parents, you know, brother. You just look generally back on your childhood as being very happy. And then 25 to 45 is actually when you're least happiest. Why? It's what I call the shit gets real part of your life. You come to the discovery that
forever now I drive alone past your street.
Okay, I know this video wasn't supposed to be serious, but it's emblematic of a very interesting concept called the paradox of choice. The paradox of choice is this idea that, contrary to popular Western beliefs, the abundance of choice isn't inherently good. Having more choices often makes it harder for us to make decisions, sometimes to the point where we end up not deciding on anything at all. And that ultimately leaves us unhappy because our choices are how we define ourselves. And if we're not making choices, then we're not forming identities. And the reason why I think the paradox of choice is relevant to this video is because it's pointing out how social media and the ubiquity of sharing our experiences on the internet makes us so acutely aware of just how many choices we have in the infinitely different ways we could be living our lives, often leaving us paralyzed by all these choices in bed, scrolling. One of my favorite quotes is, "Sometimes I can hear my bones straining under the weight of all the lives I'm not living." Choice establishes identity, and when we're not making choices, we're not establishing who we are. And the best advice I've heard on the topic is, what choices can you make today that will put you where you want to be tomorrow?
All right, I need to know, what insane stat lives in your head?
98% of your thinking comes from unconscious beliefs. Beliefs that were formed while you were growing up and are most likely not true. All of these thoughts are automatic. Makes you question everything you do and how in control you are, right? If your unconscious belief is that you are not enough, you will likely overwork yourself. If your unconscious belief is that you are not lovable, you will often struggle in relationships. Too many people accept their thoughts as facts and let them turn into self-fulfilling prophecies. You don't have to. You have the power to change your thoughts and your beliefs, which is why mindset work is one of the best things you can do for yourself, and it will change your life. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Carl Jung.
Have you ever read a nonfiction book that you learned so much from that it changed the way you think about everything?
So I took a global insurrectionary class when I was in undergrad, and we had to read all the classics, Marx and Engels, Gramsci, Trotsky, Kropotkin, Mao, Lenin, etc. But nothing slapped as hard as this book, The Coming Insurrection by the Invisible Committee. I have reread this book so many times. The cover is so fucked up right now. It's written by a secret group of French anarcho-communists, and let me just read the back for you. It's useless to wait for a breakthrough for the revolution, the nuclear apocalypse, or a social movement. To go on waiting is madness. The catastrophe is not coming, it is here. We are already situated within the collapse of a civilization. It is within this reality that we must choose sides. And when I tell you, I haven't known a moment of peace since I read this book. Yeah, 10 out of 10 would recommend. If you feel dispossessed in modern society, go read it.
Hello everybody, and welcome to another episode of Vibe Talks. I haven't done one of these in a while. Today we're going to be talking about being forgotten and why it fascinates me. Well, why does it fascinate me? Well, most of us know our grandparents, at least by name. Some of us might know our great-grandparents, but most of us don't. I know one of them by name, but that's it. I've never met any of my great-grandparents. And why that fascinates me is to put it in perspective. Say you have kids. Your kids' kids, those would be your grandchildren. Your grandchildren won't know your mother and father. They won't know them at all. They won't even know their name unless you tell them, because they will likely be dead by the time that your grandkids are born. Why does that fascinate me? Well, within a span of 100 years after you die, mostly everyone on Earth is forgotten by everyone living. Now, there might be a record of you, but unless you've done something fantastic, no one remembers you. It's depressing, but cool.
I haven't really been feeling like myself lately. When I wake up, I don't want to do anything, and when I get out of bed, I don't do anything. I just kind of waste my time. It's funny because I have all these goals and ambitions, but I just can't bring myself to accomplish any of them. Like, I used to make music and art and do all these cool things, but I don't even want to fucking clean my room anymore, and I don't know why. Like, I don't think I'm depressed, but I'm devoid of motivation. I don't see an end in sight. Like, it's like I'm locked in a perpetual state of what is to me non-existence. So I force myself to go outside and make a video, but I just want to know, like, am I the only one that's been feeling like this lately? Like, has anybody else been feeling this too? Like,
I used to think we were living in a simulation. Then I talked to some colleagues, did some more reading, and now I feel a little better that we're probably not. The argument for it was, you get a real universe, and then people in there get really smart, and they program computers, and they create worlds. And the people in that world don't know that they're fake, all right? And then they evolve, and they develop computers, and they create a world, and they create a world. And this goes all the way down. And so there's the real world and all the worlds that can create worlds, except the last one, which is still working on it. Eventually they'll get there. All right, throw a dart. Chances are you're going to hit a world that's simulated. That's us. But we don't know how to make an actual simulated world where everybody thinks it's real. So either we're the last of those worlds that's still working on it, or we're the first one, which is actually real. I'm good with it.
If you were in a room with all the people you've ever met in your life, who would be the only one you look for?
You know one of the ways that circuses in the old days used to train elephants? When the baby elephant was born, they'd take a 3-foot-long stake and drive that fucker into the ground and attach it by chain to the back leg of the baby elephant, who would then tug and tug and tug and tug until they finally realized, I'm never going to be free of this fucking chain. This is my reality. And then when that baby became an adult, they'd attach the same stake that they could easily pull out of the ground to the back leg of the adult elephant, and the adult wouldn't even try because it's so believed, I'm stuck. This is my truth. Why bother trying? It's the same way with children. The fucking messages that get pressed into our soul as a child, that you suck, you're no good, you're not wanted, you'll never amount to anything, you're fat, you're stupid, you're a loser. When you come to your full power of adulthood, you still believe that shit, even though it was never fucking true to begin with. So I ask you simply, what are the bullshit beliefs that you still believe you are chained to that were never true? Have a kick-ass day.
Then why don't you just do that? Because I'm stuck. Well, maybe drop that first. Drop what? The idea that you're stuck. But who would you be if you weren't stuck? I don't know. I'd probably be in a state of acceptance, which would relax me more fully into the present moment, providing me with a bunch of energy to not be stuck because I wasn't overextending myself mentally by regretting the past or fearing the future, which would probably make it easier for you to take necessary action in alignment with the change you're trying to make. And the lack of judgment would mean I'd be more open to asking for help in areas where I saw repeating harmful patterns.